Hello and welcome to Staring at a Blank Page, sponsored by idofestivals.co.uk. In this episode, Lewis and Leigh.
There is a light that shines on her back porch at night. You see it on the bayou side for anyone that passes.
Hello, I'm at the Square Tower in Old Portsmouth with Al Lewis and Alva Leigh. Just taking you back to the early days of when you first became interested in music. Can you remember the first song that sort of grabbed you and made you want to just listen to it over and over again?
I think in terms of being interested in terms of how a song was written and wanting to decipher that element of it, it was I'm Not In Love by 10cc. I was probably 13, 14, just starting to play guitar, and there was just something really intriguing to me about that song and the melody and just the whole. I just wanted to know more about how that song had come about, and I wanted to learn how to play it. So that was, for me.
I think for me it was probably A Case of You by Joni Mitchell. I came to her music when I was about 15, 16 and just really fell in love with the lyrics and the way that her chords really explained the emotion of the song, and so I kind of became obsessed with her, and that was the song that kicked it all off for me.
So how soon after you sort of became a big music fan, how long was it before you sort of thought, I'm going to give this a go myself?
Well, I sort of started about that at 14, 15 was my first band in school, and just doing covers of everyone from the Beatles to the Stones to then what was then contemporary like Oasis and Britpop era. So I've been playing in bands for 15 years now.
Yeah, I started writing songs. I think I wrote my first song when I was 13. I do not want to hear that ever again. But so I started writing around then, and played in a band, but we did originals mostly and some covers. We were did like the circuit in Mississippi, whatever circuit there is, and so that was a long time ago.
Something more that I can say or do. Am I just a pawn in a game of win and lose?
As far as originals go, you were writing separately, and then you got together in 2014, was it 2014? Mm-hmm. How did you get together?
We met because I had made an album in Nashville back in 2012, and whilst I was there I'd done a lot of writing with different people, and one of those people that I'd written with was called Matthew Perryman Jones, and so then the following summer he came to London and was doing a gig, and so I went to see him and catch up with him, and Alva was singing with him, and we got to chat after the show, and then Alva told me that she was living in the UK as well. So as a songwriter does, you say, oh, well, shall we try and write some stuff together, with no sort of no particular purpose to that writing, just writing for writing's sake, and so it all sort of snowballed from there.
Mechanically, how did that work? Were you living quite close together, and were you in the same room, or were you sending each other lyrics or melodies? And
so my husband and I moved to London 5 years ago, and we were living at opposite ends of the Northern Line, Al and I. So we would kind of go to each other's flats and write songs. Usually, we would both come with maybe a little nugget of an idea and then build on it in the room together. So very rarely did we ever do any work outside of that joint collaboration in the room together. So now we both have moved away from London and live in different cities. So we've had to become a bit more creative of how we work. So we're still experimenting with different methods, but I think the best work happens in the room together.
And generally, is there any order in which it comes, lyrics or a chord progression or something, or can it just be anything that sparks it off?
I think it's always, so far, been music first. I think writing to lyrics first could be a cool thing to try. I always find that music sort of guides you in the direction where the lyric would want to go anyway, so it kind of helps to have the music first, I think. But I don't think there's a general consensus that either one is better, but I think for us it's been music first. Everyone
writes a bad song at some point. Some people would give up. Have you ever got to that point where you're thinking, this isn't working out for me, and what was it that sort of dragged you back from the edge?
I think that a lot of times we write a bad song that leads to a good song. That sometimes you have to kind of like flesh out the bad song and get it out of your system, especially if we haven't been writing together for a while. It's almost like if you're training for a marathon and you have one race and it goes, really badly, but it's like your practice run and you get it out of the way. So the next time you go out there, you're, a little bit faster, you make a better time. I think that's how it works for us sometimes. So I think we wrote, over 20 songs for our album and only 10 of them made it on. So I think that even if you write a bad song, sometimes it's good to just finish it and then be done with it and move on to something else. And sometimes, we can draw on our catalog of bad songs and pick out some bits that become something good. So it's always good to write the bad ones.
But the devil's in the detail. But the devil's in the detail of you and I. Of you and I, oh, the devil's in the detail, oh, the devil.
Do you think that your influences have changed from when you were writing solo before you got together? Do you think that your influences, or the influences that are coming through in your songs, are slightly different to the ones that when you were solo?
Well, yeah, I was a lot more folky singer-songwritery before Lewis and Leigh, and then, once we had decided to make Lewis and Leigh a band, we then did purposefully decide to make it sound a bit more sort of Americana, I suppose is the term most generally used. And so for the first few months, we would deliberately try and write those type of songs, which writing to a, not a theme, but writing to an idea or a genre can be good sometimes because you know where you want to sit. But I think so quickly after that you then want to push those limits a bit further. So we're definitely growing in terms of our influences and our desires to evolve musically.
Growing up in separate countries, you would think initially that maybe you didn't have that much in common to write about, but it's clear that that's not the case. So did that surprise you about how much your upbringing and your backgrounds wasn't a problem? It didn't get in the way, that there are so many similarities that you could explore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Welsh history hasn't made its way into the Mississippi grade school curriculum yet, but, still could happen. But we grew up in small communities where everybody knows everybody's business, and it's kind of like these parts of the world that people always talk about, but not very many people go to them. And my hometown was hit really hard by Hurricane Katrina, and that really changed it. But it was a very resilient community, and so we sort of talked about the places that we grew up and found that the places that Al grew up weren't very, very dissimilar, and that ended up becoming some really great songs. So we didn't really know each other before we started writing together, and so like you do with any creative collaboration, it's just so much of it is just talking and getting to know the other person and then writing from that.
Your hometown was hit by Hurricane Thatcher, right? there is a reference to Maggie. I assume that's the Maggie you're talking about.
Yes, that is Maggie Thatcher, yes. My mother's family are from South Wales, and my mum grew up in Rumney, and all those mining communities were devastated by the closure of the mines. I'm too young personally to have remembered it, but I know from hearing stories from family, and I think that's the job of a songwriter is to tell the story, even if you haven't lived it yourself, is to paint the picture as as close as you possibly can if you haven't experienced it. And yeah, Wales is often, you know, thought of as the little brother to Ireland and Scotland, because especially in America, people always talk about the Irish who went over and the Scottish that went over, and people sort of forget about Wales. And so I'm a very proud Welshman, and so I'm always eager to big it up.
Did Al have to explain that lyric to you when you first, or were you aware of that sort of
No,
thing?
yeah. I mean, I unfortunately needed a bit of a history lesson, but it was great, and it's two stories that you wouldn't think are related, but actually they are a lot related, and it was especially when we made the video for that song. We went driving through the valleys, and we saw a lot of those abandoned mines and just the poverty that still remains. And my sister, who still lives in Gulfport, my hometown, you know, she took her an app on her iPhone and drove around, and 10 years later, still some of the just destruction and abandoned construction projects that remain after Katrina. And, you know, it's still you know, a betrayal of government assistance. It's like those are still the same problems, and they still exist today. But you meet people from those places, and they're very proud of where they come from, and they rehabilitate their communities in a grassroots way that's really inspiring, and I think affected the way that the people that we are now, just coming from those communities.
Down in the South Wales Valley, there was a booming mining town, where every working man was someone, until Maggie shut them down. But now they're rubble, now they're rubble, now they're rubble, now they're rubble.
You've probably heard a saying that goes along the lines of talent borrows, genius steals.
Absolutely.
Without getting into too many legal issues, do you think that you've stolen anything or heard something in the song and said, I'm definitely including that in our next song?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that statement. There's nothing new to create in music.
No new songs.
It's only interpretation. You know, it's like saying to a painter, can you create a new colour? There's only you know, the colours that exist, and it's about what you do with those colours. And so I often tell Alva, if we're writing, she'll be like, wait, what is that? And I'll be like, don't even go there.
It's like the most annoying thing that I do while I'm writing songs, and I can sit there and kind of search through the file cabinet of melodies and be like, oh, we can't use that, that's this. But it's really annoying.
And once you get that idea, you can't get that idea out of your head.
That's why he says, don't do it. But yeah, there are certainly some people that I hope never hear our music because they might sue us.
What's your favourite song, and why is it your favourite song?
One of them, I mean it changes, but one of them for me is God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, just because that marriage of beautiful melody and beautiful lyric and idea, I just think the way the song twists that concept, I think is genius.
Yeah, I mean, I know I already spoke about this one, but A Case of You by Joni Mitchell is one of my all-time favorite songs. Or anything off Tapestry by Carole King is a huge inspiration for me. But, you know, A Case of You is one of those lyrics that I feel like the metaphor kind of unfolds throughout the song, and it's just such the way that she sings it with so much abandon and just lovely chords. It's just one of those songs that's just like a turning point in my kind of musical map, and this is one of the best.
So then what is your favourite song of your own, and why?
For me, it's the 419, I think. That is a song.
Is that the award-winning 419?
That's
yes,
why
it
she
is.
just said that to you.
It is the award-winning 419. That is a song that we wrote really quickly, but it's such a simple song, and I just think it's a sentiment that everyone can relate to. Yet whenever I think of that song, and kind of sometimes we work on a lyric and it kind of is a reference to different things for each of us, but I think that shows the power or the malleability of a lyric, which is important. But when I listen to that song, it kind of takes me back to a certain experience, and it was one of those things that I'm so glad we were able to capture it, because it's something that you never want to forget, even though that song goes on. And as Joni Mitchell once said, that you want to write songs that can grow up and be good kids and go out in the world and be good citizens. And I think that one might do it just a little bit. I don't want to brag on the song, but I think it's going to be all right.
I fall asleep and in my dreams I hear, son, you're at the end of the line. Hate to think all I do is waste my time. And I walk these streets alone at night, looking for a reason to stay. But all I have are reasons to go away. But in my head
just based on your own experience of the songwriting process, is there anything that you've learned that you wish you had known earlier on, that's, tricks or just methods or anything that you wish you had known that would have made things a little bit easier, or is it all part of the journey?
I think, you life experience is priceless, and I think that's why it's really hard to write a deep and meaningful song when you're 19, 20, because you haven't lived yet, so you don't really know much about life. So experience is invaluable. That's what I would tell my 19-year-old self. And also don't worry too much about overcomplicating things.
I think for me, I would say you should study the songs that you love and study what makes them great, and also just to read as much as possible, and to not be afraid to look for inspiration in every place, eavesdrop and take notes and watch great films and just take in life as it happens to you. But also I think a book that's been really helpful to me is Pat Patterson's Writing Better Lyrics. And it is a bit more of a technical approach, but I think sometimes when you scrape the bottom of the barrel and you feel really uninspired, it is a job, and you do have to just sit down and get to work and put your head down. And there are things that help you get better at finding more descriptive words for all the cliches. And I think that it's important to push yourself to write better lyrics, and he teaches a whole course on it, and it's really good.
We've already touched on the awards, so congratulations on the awards. This is the UK Americana Music Association, is it?
Yes.
Right.
And for Best Single and Best Album. But does that add any extra pressure now that you're the award-winning duo Lewis and Leigh?
I think it's nice to get recognition and to feel like, your work is being valued and appreciated. That's always nice, whatever you do in life. But I think you always have to have, especially in this field, you have to have that inner determination and inner drive, because it's a very tough thing to try and be a full-time musician and to make a living out of it. So resting on your laurels if you think you've made it by winning a couple of awards is a dangerous thing. So, but it's a lovely thing to have.
Yeah, hopefully it brings more people to our music. I think we've been thrilled to have as many people come to our gigs, but we feel like we've only reached such a small portion of listeners, and so hopefully awards like this bring more people to us.
We can buy your album through your website, lewisandleigh.com, on all formats, Spotify, iTunes, all the usual places.
Yeah.
All the usual places.
Okay.
Your local independent record stores.
Thank you very much for your time. Good luck with the gig tonight.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much. Thanks.